Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about feedback, okay? More specifically, giving feedback. Apart from just checking the answers with our students when they have finished a certain task, maybe a listening task or a reading task, how can we make this feedback moment, more engaging? So these are some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. Well, the first thing that we have to consider is peer checking. Whenever your students have finished what they were doing, ask them to compare their answers. It's going to increase their confidence if their answers are correct. And if their answers are not correct, they're going to be given the chance to look at their answers again, and it's also some sort of processing time. They're going to be given the chance to look at their answers once again. Needless to say that they're also going to be provided with more opportunities to talk to their peers as well. Another thing to consider is, who do you ask? Usually we tend to ask like the whole class. What happens is that usually the more capable students are the first one to raise their hands and answer the questions. So you have to make sure you also give opportunities to the other students who are likely to be less capable, and ask them to answer the questions if you are pretty sure they have the right answers. It will also increase their confidence. And sometimes it is important, of course, to nominate our students and name our students instead of just saying you and, or asking the students' names all the time. Okay, in order to vary that, so in order actually to avoid asking the same students like all the time, there are a couple of things that you should consider. Maybe you could stand in a different place, or maybe you could sit them in different places, or mix them up throughout the lesson, but try to make an effort, try to make a conscious effort to include everyone. The third thing that you have to consider is wait. If you ask your students the questions and you know that they have the answer, or they might have the answer, you have to be patient. You gotta be patient. So if you ask your students a question, wait until they formulate their answers and so that it can actually come out of their mouth. And it's going to take a little while. When it comes to second language learning, it always takes a little while for our students to formulate their answers and actually answer our questions. So wait, you have to be a little bit more patient. Another thing, use an answer key. Okay, it's always a good idea to have an answer key. If you have those long exercises like with 10, with 12, or maybe 15 questions and 15 answers, and you're pretty sure that your students are not going to struggle with that, usually these are more like controlled exercises. Give them the answer key, okay? Ask them to compare their answers with the answer keys, or you could also ask them to compare the answers with their partners as well, which is again be another opportunity to talk, to another speaking opportunity. Okay, another thing to consider is using selective feedback. You do not have to go over all the answers when you're giving feedback to your students, okay? Usually when students are doing certain activities, and it happens usually when they're doing something in pairs, okay, we have to consider that they are helping one another, okay? And usually they're working with those who are less capable of working with those who are more capable, and they end up helping each other. What happens is that while you're monitoring, if you realize that your students did not struggle with certain questions, so I don't think there is no reason to spend your time, or I would say waste your time, going over all those answers once you know they are already correct, because you noticed that while you were monitoring around. So when you're giving feedback to the whole class, and you realize that half of the class got the right answer and half of the class got the wrong answer for a certain exercise, for a certain question, so maybe this is the opportunity to talk a little bit more about that question, to talk a little bit more about that exercise, and help your students with whatever it was that they didn't understand. And last but not least, When it comes to productive skills, usually speaking activities in which the students they have to express their point of views. I would also like to give you a couple of tips. First of all, there is no need to ask every student in the class for feedback on a content-based task, as this is often time-consuming. So if you're going if it's a post-reading or a post-listening exercise, there is always a question in which they have to react to the task, for example, and they end up somehow expressing their opinions as well. You don't have time to ask all your students their opinions and their thoughts. This is really time consuming, and it is really going to compromise productive time in your class, which would be moments in which the students would be given a chance to talk more, to interact more with their partners. The second thing to consider is you have to comment on your students' ideas as well as their language errors. Usually we tend to focus a lot on accuracy, we tend to focus a lot on language, and we end up forgetting what our students are saying. We end up not paying attention to what they're saying, actually. So learners, they really want to know what you're thinking, like what are your ideas as well. And just make sure you react to what your students say in feedback. It's usually more motivating for learners if a teacher shows interest in what they're saying. And when I say react, I mean, I don't mean like just saying that's very good, that's very okay, that's awful, that's terrible, that's amazing, that's awesome. I mean really reacting, asking a genuine question. Try to get to know a little bit more about what your students are saying. Try to really engage in a sort of interaction with your students, okay? And try not to focus too much on accuracy. All right, and remember, guys, never stop learning. Keep reflecting on your teaching. And why? Because there will always be room for improvement. Thank you.